I know what people will say about me, that I'm selfish, weak, disloyal. Maybe they're right, but before you judge me, you need to understand how I got there. Because nothing in this story is as simple as it looks. I never planned on marrying a man with a past still living in the walls of his home. I never planned on inheriting his memories. And I certainly never planned on what would happen when he walked back into our lives. My name is Lisa Carter. I was 29 when I met David. We met at a charity gala in Chicago. Not the glamorous kind, more like silent auctions and lukewarm wine in a hotel ballroom that smelled like perfume and rich loneliness. David was standing alone near the balcony doors, hands in his pockets, watching the world from a polite distance. Silver hair, steady voice, presence like a quiet storm. He was 45 then, old enough to know grief, young enough to pretend he'd overcome it. His wife, Claire, had died 3 years earlier. Car accident. Sudden. No goodbye. I didn't know any of that when I first saw him. But grief has a way of revealing itself even when the mouth stays closed. Maybe that's why he noticed me too. My mother had passed the year before. I was still raw in places I didn't talk about. Maybe we recognized something familiar, something broken. David didn't rush me. No dramatic declarations, just small gestures, gentle patterns, flowers on Tuesdays, dinner on Fridays, text messages sent at odd hours, just thinking of you. It wasn't passion. It was safety. And at that point in my life, safety felt like love. 6 months later, we were married. The house I moved into was large in the way that feels empty, not luxurious. 5 bedrooms, one of which had clearly belonged to someone no longer there. The walls held pictures of David and Claire smiling on vacations, birthdays, New Year's, ordinary days that mattered more in hindsight. I felt like I was borrowing someone else's life, but I told myself marriage was about patience, about building something slowly. I tried to fill the silence. I tried to make the house mine. I tried to love David the way he loved the memory of her, and for a while, that was enough. Then came March 2020. Lockdowns, travel bans, schools closed. Everyone came home to wherever home was, including him. His name was Ethan Ward, the son of David's closest friend from college, a man named Mock who lived 2 states away. I'd met Ethan once, briefly, at our wedding reception. He was there for maybe 20 minutes, polite smile, dark eyes that didn't reveal much. David always referred to him like a godson, though the relationship was less formal, more like David had watched him grow up from a distance. When the universities shut down, Ethan needed a place to stay. His father was overseas for work, stuck in quarantine. Traveling wasn't safe. Hotels were shutting down. The world felt small overnight. So David said, "He'll stay with us for a while." A while. 3 words that can change the entire direction of a life. The day Ethan arrived, he stood in the doorway with just a backpack slung over one shoulder. 22 now, taller than I remembered. His hair a little longer, his voice deeper. He looked at David first. They hugged like family who didn't need words. Then he looked at me, not with rejection, not with warmth either, just observing, like he was taking inventory of someone he didn't expect to live with. "Hi," he said eventually. "Hi," I replied. That was it. And maybe that was the beginning. The first few weeks were quiet. David worked from his office downstairs. I worked from the small study near the kitchen. Ethan split time between online classes and the basement gym. We ate dinner together, or rather, we sat at the same table. David talked about news headlines and supply chains. I asked polite questions. Ethan answered in short sentences. Silence filled the spaces between us. We looked like a family. We were not one. Not yet. Maybe not ever. One evening, I walked past the basement and heard the weights. The clank of metal. The rhythm of someone pushing their body past its limit. I looked down the stairs. Ethan. Focused. Determined. A quiet intensity in every movement. Nothing inappropriate, nothing dramatic. Just a presence I hadn't expected. Something shifted in me then, and I hated myself for noticing. So I told myself it meant nothing. Just a young man becoming an adult. Just a house rediscovering occupancy. Just noise in a place that had been so quiet for so long. But homes remember silence, and mine had grown used to it. Over time, routine formed. Dinner at 6. Dishes together. Not spoken, just understood. One night, as he handed me a plate to dry, our fingers brushed. A small thing. A moment so insignificant it should have meant nothing, but I felt it. And I knew he did too, because neither of us pulled away immediately. The air changed, not romantic, not intimate, just charged. Like a room before a storm, I went to bed early that night. David slept beside me, breathing steady, dreaming of nothing he'd remember. I stared at the ceiling, wondering when I had last felt noticed. Not wanted, not desired, just seen, and the answer I found: hurt. That was the beginning, not of the mistake itself, but of the space where mistakes grow. Quiet, hungry, waiting. We were 3 people in the same house, but we were already becoming strangers. It was late April when the house began to feel smaller, not physically, emotionally. 3 people under one roof, 3 different forms of loneliness, each of us circling the others, quietly, carefully, pretending not to touch. David spent most of his time on video calls. His voice filled the house but never reached either of us. Ethan and I learned each other by accident. Passing in the hallway, reaching for the same drawer, standing at opposite ends of the kitchen, pretending the silence was comfortable. We rarely spoke, but we noticed. One evening, a storm rolled through Illinois, wind against the windows, branches scraping the siding. The kind of night where the world felt too close. The lights flickered, then went out. Everything went quiet. I lit a candle in the living room. The flame flickered, warm and unsteady. Ethan stepped in from the hallway, his face soft in the dim light. Not confident, not shy, just real. "Your husband's still on his call," he said. I nodded. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, the kind of distance 2 people choose when they're afraid to acknowledge what isn't being said. After a while, he spoke again. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" The question hit me like a memory I'd been avoiding. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He could see it in my eyes. The storm outside cracked open the sky, and for the first time, we were not strangers. We were 2 people who understood loneliness. Days passed. The power returned. The lights came back on, but something in the house stayed dim, not broken, just changed. We didn't cross any lines, not physically. But emotions don't wait for permission. One afternoon, I found him in the basement, sitting on the floor beside the weights, not working out, just thinking. He looked up at me, surprised to be seen. "Are you okay?" I asked. He hesitated, then nodded, the kind of nod that means no. "I didn't think I'd end up back here," he said. "I thought I knew who I was." Then the world stopped, and now I don't know anything. I sat down beside him, not close, but not far. "I know," I whispered, because I did. We talked for the first time, really talked, about grief, about expectations, about the roles we play because we're afraid to be who we are. He listened to me, not politely, not distantly. He listened like my voice mattered, and I realized how long it had been since anyone had done that. I went to bed that night and cried quietly beside my husband, not because of what had happened, but because of what hadn't. Because sometimes silence is the loudest confession of all. It happened on a morning that shouldn't have meant anything. David had flown to Texas for a project that couldn't be postponed. The house felt too quiet. I made coffee, forgot to add sugar. Didn't notice. Ethan walked into the kitchen. I didn't look up. I didn't have to. I could feel him. He reached beside me and took a mug from the cabinet. His hand brushed mine, a small touch. But small things are not always small. We both froze. No words, no explanations. Just the truth settling in the air between us. He didn't move closer. I didn't step away. We just stood there, breathing the same moment. And then, I stepped back, because I knew what would happen if I didn't. His jaw tightened, not in frustration, in understanding. "I shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "But you are," I replied. A pause. A lifetime inside 2 seconds. "We both know what this is," he said. "Yes," I whispered. "But knowing doesn't make it right." He nodded once, then walked away. No door slammed, no dramatic exit, just the sound of footsteps on hard wood. That was the line, not the kitchen, not the touch, the knowing. Once 2 people acknowledge what they feel, they can never return to before. David came home 3 days later. I greeted him normally, smiled when expected. stood where I was supposed to stand, but something about me had changed, and David saw it instantly. Not the way a husband sees a wife, but the way someone recognizes an absence. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I don't know," I answered. He didn't press. He didn't want the truth. He wanted the comfort of not knowing. But silence has weight, and ours finally collapsed. 2 weeks later, David and I separated. There was no fight, no accusations, just exhaustion. Two people who had once tried, who had once hoped, who had run out of ways to bridge the distance between them. Ethan left the same day I did. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't have to. Some connections aren't meant to last. Some people come into your life not to stay, but to show you what you needed to see. I didn't lose my marriage because of him. I lost it because it had already been empty long before he arrived. He just illuminated the quiet truth. We were supposed to be a family, but we had become strangers. And sometimes, the most compassionate choice is to stop pretending otherwise.